How do you put this into context and the impact that it will have on the CBC and Democrats at large?
Well, let me, first of all, just thank you for having me, Joe. And this is devastating. And I think you framed it right in your introduction. This is the greatest reduction of representation of Black communities, particularly in the Deep South, that we have seen since the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. And that lack of representation in the halls of power, whether it's at the federal government level or at the state or local level, is devastating. For individuals not to be in a position to have representation that they elected, that comes from their lived experiences, that recognizes the challenges and triumphs of their communities and helps to shape policy that fully impacts that, is really a devastating blow.
Well, Madam Chair, talk to us about the power that is in numbers in the halls of Congress. What does a reduction in the size of the Congressional Black Caucus mean for the power it is able to wield in terms of policymaking?
Absolutely. You know, right now we have members of the Congressional Black Caucus sitting on every major committee of jurisdiction in the House of Representatives, as well as 4 senators in the United States Senate. And between both houses, we're able to look at legislation that's being proposed, look at the benefits to people who have long gone without benefit in the United States of America, help to shape and promote these pieces of legislation so that they have an impact on those who have been left behind or who have been marginalized in our civil society. And that work happens at the committee level, where many of our members serve, and at the leadership table, where many of our members serve. So this is a reshaping, quite frankly, of the civil society through policy that will change the way that all Americans live. Because the other point that is being made with this mid-decade redistricting is to advantage, in a 2-party system, one party over another. There's no real competition here when you draw maps that enable you to have an immovable majority, particularly in the House of Representatives. And so this is beyond rigging the system. This is stealing leadership from the leadership table to advance your own agenda. And, we as a community are not going to stand for it.
Well, so what is the community's answer then, or even the party's answer, Congresswoman? Is there a legal answer, or do you just keep redrawing maps in blue states to keep up with the red ones?
Well, right now we are battling on every front, whether it's in the courts. And understand, this is a state-by-state initiative. Each state has different election law. And so the ultimate goal would be to pass a John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which then levels the playing field for how to make sure that protected classes remain protected in the United States of America. In addition to that, we've got other pieces of legislation that speak to redistricting and speak to the Supreme Court. There are a whole host of conspirators, if you will, in the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. And we intend to do everything within our power to make sure that we move forward with policies that recognize the multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious civil society that is the United States of America.
Well, if we could talk about the redistricting effort in your state of New York in particular, Congresswoman, it was confirmed to me this week by your colleague Joe Morelli that there are 2 amendments that will be under consideration, one of which would change the Constitution and remove any language putting restricting gerrymandering, given everything you were just saying about how the redrawing of maps is just party favoring party. Is that a mistake, that course of action?
Well, let me say this. In this moment, we cannot afford to unilaterally disarm. We did not start this mid-decade redistricting battle. Donald Trump went to Texas, and Donald Trump told the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, that he needs 5 seats. That is what began all of this. And we know right now the House of Representatives has a slim majority of about 3 seats. And so the idea that in the middle of elections that are already taking place in Louisiana, people had already started voting when this occurred, that democracy would be undermined in such a way as to basically draw out Democratic seats across this nation, and that Democrats would just sit back and allow this to happen, it's just a non-starter.
You know, Chair Clarke, a lot of Democrats who talk to us on the air think that redistricting could be overcome by fundamentals in this race, the messaging that Democrats are seizing on right now with high energy prices and some of the other issues that have played well in special elections and in primaries leading up till now. We're looking at a national average for gasoline of $4.39. In your state of New York, it's even more, $4.56. And this gets to the heart of a role that you play on the Energy Committee in the House of Representatives. I'm wondering the extent to which your constituents should get used to prices like this, and if you're hearing anything from the administration involving the war in Iran. The president says these prices will plummet as soon as the war is over. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it because, quite frankly, there have been many statements made by President Donald Trump that have panned out to be untrue. And so, you know, it's sort of, you know, we'll believe it when we see it. Nothing indicates it. Certainly his rhetoric, where he says he's not concerned about the economics of the American civil society, that does not in any way bolster confidence in what Donald Trump is doing right now. We've heard so many different policies that he's about to employ, and then he changes his mind. And so until it's a done deal, I won't believe it. My constituents in the 9th District of New York are hurting. The cost of living has skyrocketed on multiple levels. It's very complex, from housing to healthcare, from everyday groceries to gasoline. You name it, our communities are suffering. And it's not just our communities. It's communities across this nation. And so, you know, until Donald Trump recognizes that his unauthorized war never brought to Congress, so we never had an opportunity to even have these conversations with our constituents, doing town halls for the need to go to Iran and go to war. It never took place. And so we're all suffering from what I consider to be a rogue president.